Fellas, UFC 300's this weekend, and there's lots of narratives that are being brought into this card. A lot of narratives that people are, talking about according to this card, and there's just a lot of narratives that I hate and disagree with. So I'm going to be going over a few narratives that are really being pushed onto UFC 300 that I just completely disagree with, and that I think are basically just BS narratives that people keep saying that I just completely don't agree with. Starting off with the first narrative, it's that Cody Garbrandt's got no chin and Deiveson Figueiredo's got this insane power. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible for Cody Garbrandt to get knocked out. I understand he's probably got one of the worst chins currently in the UFC, or at least not one of the best ones, or not. He's got a below average chin, and Figueiredo has pop in his hands, but people have just seen the fact that Cody Garbrandt might not have a great chin and that Figgy has pop in his hands, and they're letting that be their entire narrative. No, it seems like no one's really breaking down this fight in terms of skill and styles. They're simply just looking at the fact that Cody Garbrandt's, his chin might have not been the best in previous fights, and that's their entire narrative for this fight. When you break it down, I'm not saying he can't get knocked out by Figueiredo. It could definitely happen. I think stylistically, Garbrandt's a really tough fight for Figueiredo as well. He's quick, he's powerful, he's defensively really sound. I know his chin's not that good. It's when he gets hit, it's the problem. It's not the fact that he gets hit a lot, it's just when he gets hit. And he's a great wrestler as well. Figueiredo, he's also a good striker. He's really well-rounded, great jiu-jitsu, but I don't think any of that's going to matter when he's facing a guy who's as tough as Cody Garbrandt. And I'm not going to do a whole prediction. I've already done that now. But you look at Figueiredo, when does he actually knock people out? He's faced chinny people in the past, and he hasn't been able to get them out of there. You actually look at him, I understand he can drop people here and there, but when does he actually put people out cold? Like Figueiredo, I think his power is completely overrated. I understand he's got pop in his hand and he's got some good power, but I feel like the whole narrative that it's over for Cody Garbrandt, I just completely disagree. People were saying the exact same thing about Luke Rockhold and Paulo Costa, that Luke Rockhold's chinny, Costa's the hardest hitter in the division, it's over. And I understand that Costa won that fight, but it was a scrap. It was back and forth. They both had moments, so I'm not saying Garbrandt can't get knocked out. I'm just saying the whole narrative that it's over because of the power that Figueiredo has, I just completely disagree with that. So that's the first narrative that I'm against. The next narrative is that Hill versus Poatan is not UFC 300 worthy. Now, I completely understand if your side of it is that, you're expecting a super fight like Khabib versus GSP because they were hyping it up to be, and then we got Hill versus Poatan, which could have been every pay-per-view. I completely understand, and to be honest, I agree. But the fact that there's still people going out there saying that it's not UFC 300 worthy, it's a bad fight. You look at the comments under the announcement of this fight, and they're all just trashing on the fight. In reality, this is an amazing fight. This is one of the best light heavyweight fights you can make right now. You've got two guys with dangerous boxing, extremely just dangerous overall, great strikers, both had a really good run in the UFC, and now they're going against each other. Jamal Hill didn't even lose his belt either, he vacated it. I feel like the storyline and the overall fight is going to be amazing, and I understand it's not super fight Khabib, GSP or McGregor worthy, but it's still a great fight, and I think we should be grateful. We could have had Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. Imagine we instead had Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad headlining this card. I'm just saying, this is one of the best title fights in the entirety of the UFC, and even though it might not be mainstream superstar worthy, I think we should be grateful about the fight because it's a really good fight, and I'm a really big fan of Pereira versus Hill. So that's the second narrative that I'm sick of people talking about, and I know it's quite outdated now. People were mainly talking about it a few weeks ago, but still, I just want to get that off my chest. And then talking of Poatan versus Hill, I've seen a lot of people saying that, Jamal Hill's completely, I feel like people are really overestimating the gap between the striking of Poatan and Hill. People are acting like Poatan is absolutely levels above Jamal Hill when it comes to striking. Now, I understand I picked Alex Pereira to win, but that's not because he's necessarily such a better striker. I just think the injury that Jamal Hill's coming off and the fact that Poatan loves going for the leg kicks early on, I feel like that's going to be a big problem for Jamal Hill. But yeah, I feel like the whole narrative that, Jamal Hill's a terrible striker, well, not a terrible striker, but in comparison to Pereira, they're worlds apart. I really don't think they're that far apart. I think they're both really good at striking. Jamal Hill's really good at range. His footwork's amazing. He knows exactly when to come in and out. And then Pereira, he's great at setting up left hooks, and I know he's going to utilize those leg kicks. And I think overall, it's a really good striking match. Again, I'm not saying if Pereira knocks out Jamal Hill, then that means he's necessarily a much better striker. I'm just saying I feel like the whole narrative that they're worlds apart, I don't know where that came from. I don't know why people think that, but I completely disagree. Pereira was getting, I'm not going to say, you know, he was significantly losing or anything like that, but he was getting caught by Yuri Prochazka before the knockout. You watch that fight, Yuri Prochazka was starting to, you know, like Pereira up kind of, you know, he's landing shots against Pereira, and Jamal Hill's boxing is insane, and yeah, that's just another narrative. The fact that people are completely overestimating the gap between the striking difference between Hill and Pereira, Hill and Pereira. I do think Pereira wins the fight, but people are completely underestimating Jamal Hill in this fight, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was to sleep Alex Pereira. Talking of light heavyweight, another narrative is I feel like people, again, they're really overestimating how exciting Alexander Rakic versus Yuri Prochazka will be. And I don't want to be one of these guys that just goes through every matchup and starts hating on it because it's not that interesting. I don't think it's going to be a boring fight. I just think people have seen the name Yuri Prochazka, and because Yuri Prochazka is attached to the fight, they immediately think it's going to be a banger. I've heard people saying that this is going to be a banger, fight of the night. You know, this is going to be an absolute war. And I'm just saying there's a reason it's not on the main card. I don't think it's going to be a boring fight, but I think this is going to be one of the more... I mean, when we think of Yuri Prochazka, we think of a fun scrap. I don't think this is going to be that fight. I mean, first of all, it's a 3-rounder, but the main issue is Alexander Rakic. I feel like Alexander Rakic, he's a much more technical striker. I'm not saying he's more technical than Yuri. I just think he's more technical. I don't think he's going to engage in a scrap. I don't think he's going to come to it for a war. And I think the fact that he's coming off an injury and is going thrown back right in there with no layup in UFC 300, the biggest card ever against one of the craftiest strikers in the world, I think he's going to be very hesitant. And unless Yuri Prochazka forces him into a war, I really don't think this has fight of the night potential. And I just think it's going to be not a boring fight, but I think it's going to be more of a slow-paced fight compared to what we're used to seeing Yuri Prochazka in. So the narrative that it's going to be a banger just because Yuri's in it is another thing that I disagree with. And then the next narrative is Beneil Dariush being chinny. And I know Beneil Dariush isn't on this card. You're probably wondering why am I mentioning this. It's mainly because people are completely just slipping past the idea that Arman Tsarukyan knocked out Beneil Dariush, and they're all, Beneil Dariush was chinny, he's old, he's washed, doesn't really count for Arman Tsarukyan. I think we need to give Arman Tsarukyan more credit for knocking out Beneil Dariush in the fashion that he did. He did it so quickly, and I know Charles Oliveira knocked him out before, but the entire narrative that Beneil Dariush was chinny only came after Arman Tsarukyan knocked him out. And I understand that Oliveira finished him beforehand, but still, I think we need to give Arman Tsarukyan credit. It's not like he went out there and knocked out Tony Ferguson. Beneil Dariush, since when was this? Beneil Dariush an extremely chinny guy. He's always been a technical, well-rounded guy with great wrestling who can pose a threat to anyone. There was so many people saying that Dariush was going to destroy Arman Tsarukyan. Arman Tsarukyan goes out there and knocks him out in just, what was it, like just over a minute, if that. And then everyone's now following the narrative that Beneil Dariush was chinny. We need to respect Arman Tsarukyan more. Dariush has literally been knocked out twice in his last 10 fights, and 2 of them was literally, one of them being Arman Tsarukyan and the other Charles Oliveira. So yeah, give more credit for Arman Tsarukyan for that knockout. Stop just following the narrative that Beneil Dariush is chinny, and let's just start respecting Arman Tsarukyan more. But yeah, those are the 5 narratives that I really disagree with UFC 300. I know some of them aren't that serious, but it's just something I want to get off my chest, because I've heard a lot of people following these narratives that I just completely disagree with, to be honest with you. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on these narratives, and let me know one narrative that you completely disagree with, and thank you for watching.